Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Setup. Wilford Carpenter adjusted his reading glasses as he scrolled through the leaked documents on his laptop. 20 years as an investigative journalist had taught him that corruption always left a trail. You just had to know where to look. His home office walls were decorated with framed front-page stories, each one representing someone powerful brought down by the truth. "Dad, you coming to my game Saturday?" 14-year-old Russ appeared in the doorway, basketball under his arm. His mother Irene right behind him with that look she gave when Wilford was too buried in work. "Wouldn't miss it, champ," Wilford said, closing his laptop. The housing development fraud story could wait. "How's school going? You've been quiet this week." Russ shrugged, but something flickered across his face. "It's fine. Just, Principal Medina's been weird lately. He keeps staring at me in the hallways." Irene's brow furrowed. "Staring? What do you mean?" "I don't know. Like he's waiting for me to mess up or something. He called me into his office yesterday, asked about you, Dad, about your work." A cold finger traced down Wilford's spine. "In his line of work, you made enemies. Powerful enemies who sometimes looked for creative ways to strike back." "What did you tell him?" "That you're a journalist." "That's it." Russ bounced the ball nervously. "Did I say something wrong?" "No, son. You did fine." Wilford forced a smile, but his mind was already racing. Gerald Medina. The name had crossed his desk 8 years ago during the investigation into educational fraud in the district. Medina had been an assistant principal then, brother to Lawrence Medina, a superintendent Wilford had exposed for steering contracts to his cronies. Lawrence had done 5 years in federal prison. Gerald had landed the principal position at Lincoln Heights Academy shortly after, keeping his head down. But men like that didn't forget. They waited. "Irene, walk with me," Wilford said after Russ headed to his room. In the kitchen, his wife crossed her arms. "You think this is about your work? Lawrence Medina's brother runs that school. I should have transferred Russ years ago, but I thought." He ran a hand through his graying hair. "I thought enough time had passed." "Wilford, you can't live paranoid." Maybe the man just. Men don't just stare at 14-year-olds and ask about their parents' careers. He pulled out his phone, texted his colleague at the paper, Erica Nelson. "Need background check on Gerald Medina, principal at Lincoln Heights. Priority." The response came in seconds. "On it. Should have it by morning." That night, Wilford couldn't sleep. He stood by Russ's door, watching his son's chest rise and fall in peaceful sleep. The boy was innocent, good-hearted, never even had a detention. If Medina was planning something, it would be vicious. Men seeking revenge always were. Chapter 2. The Trap Springs. Russ sensed something was wrong the moment he walked into Lincoln Heights Academy that Friday morning. His best friend, Ezekiel Benjamin, caught up with him at his locker. "Dude, Ms. Yates was messing with your locker earlier," Ezekiel whispered. "I saw her when I came in early for band practice. She had the master key." "Why would she do that?" Russ spun his combination lock, opened the metal door. Everything looked normal: textbooks, gym clothes, his lunch bag. "I don't know, man, but she looked nervous. Like real nervous." Elnora Yates taught sophomore English and had a reputation for being Medina's enforcer. Students called her the snitch because she reported every minor infraction directly to the principal's office. Third period, Russ was in chemistry when the classroom phone buzzed. His teacher, Mr. Santos, answered, then paled. "Russ Carpenter, you need to go to the principal's office. Now." The walk down the empty hallway felt like a death march. Other students' faces pressed against classroom door windows, watching. Word spread fast at Lincoln Heights. Principal Medina's office door was open. He sat behind his desk, hands folded, with that same cold smile Russ had seen all week. Ms. Yates stood in the corner like a vulture. "Sit down, Mr. Carpenter." Medina's voice was silk over steel. "What's this about?" "We received a report that you brought a prohibited weapon to school." Medina opened his desk drawer and pulled out a clear evidence bag. Inside was a fixed-blade hunting knife, 4 inches long. Russ's stomach dropped. "That's not mine. I've never seen that before. It was found in your locker during a random search." Medina leaned forward. "You understand the severity of this, don't you? Zero tolerance policy." I have no choice but to call the police. I didn't bring that. Someone planted it. Russ's voice cracked. That's what they all say. Ms. Yates spoke for the first time, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Medina picked up his desk phone, maintaining eye contact with Russ. Yes, I need to report a student with a weapon at Lincoln Heights Academy. Russ's hands shook. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. His mind raced to his father's warnings about powerful people and revenge. He grabbed his cell phone before anyone could stop him. I'm calling my dad. You'll do no such, Medina started, but Russ was already dialing. His father answered on the first ring. Russ. Dad, the principal says I brought a weapon. I didn't. He's calling the police. The words tumbled out in a panic. Dad, I swear I didn't. I know you didn't, son. I'm 10 minutes away. Don't say another word to anyone. Not one word. You understand? Yes, sir. I'm coming. Medina snatched the phone from Russ's hand. Your father can meet us and the police in the parking lot. Until then, you'll wait here under my supervision. The next 8 minutes were the longest of Russ's life. He sat in silence, Medina's satisfied smile never wavering, Ms. Yates guarding the door like he might bolt. Through the window, he watched 2 police cruisers pull into the lot, lights flashing, but no sirens. Then his father's truck screeched to a stop behind them. Chapter 3, Recognition. Wilford Carpenter stepped out of his vehicle with the controlled calm of a man who'd walked into countless hostile situations. 2 uniformed officers were already approaching the school entrance, hands near their weapons out of protocol. He recognized the sergeant immediately, Tyrone Strong, a good cop who'd been caught in a corruption scandal 7 years ago until Wilford's investigation proved he'd been framed by his own captain. Sergeant Strong, Wilford called out. Tyrone turned, and recognition flashed across his face. Wilford Carpenter? What are you doing here? That's my son they're accusing. The other officer, younger and eager, stepped forward. Sir, please stay back while we assess the situation. Tyrone raised his hand. Hold on, Rodriguez. He walked over to Wilford, voice low. What's really going on here? Gerald Medina is the principal. His brother was Lawrence Medina. Tyrone's jaw tightened. The superintendent you exposed? Did 5 years. Gerald's been waiting for payback. My son's never been in trouble a day in his life, Ty. Not one detention, not one fight. And suddenly he's got a weapon in his locker? On a Friday, when I'm about to publish a story on the city council's housing deal. You think this is retaliation? I know it is. Tyrone looked back at the school, then at his partner. Rodriguez, let's take this slow. Real slow. They entered through the main doors. Medina was already in the lobby, Russ beside him with Ms. Yates gripping his shoulder. The boy's eyes were red but dry. He was fighting tears, trying to be strong. Officers, thank you for responding so quickly. Medina's voice was smooth, practiced. This young man brought a knife to school. We have a zero-tolerance policy for weapons. Dad, Russ started. Not one word, son, Wilford said firmly but warmly. Remember what I told you. Mr. Carpenter, your son is in serious trouble, Medina continued. I understand this must be difficult, but where's the weapon? Tyrone interrupted. Medina produced the evidence bag. Found his locker this morning during a routine search. Routine. Wilford's voice cut like glass. You've never done a routine locker search in the 3 years my son's been here. I checked the school board policies this morning. Searches require either reasonable suspicion or must be announced school-wide. Which was it? Medina's smile faltered. We had reasonable suspicion. Based on what? An anonymous tip. From whom? Anonymous means I don't have to disclose that. Tyrone examined the knife through the plastic. This is a Buck Knives hunting knife. Retail value about $60. Not exactly something a kid would carry. Where's the sheath? We didn't find a sheath, Medina admitted. Strange. You don't carry a fixed blade without a sheath. You'd cut yourself. Tyrone looked at Russ. Son, do you have any injuries on you? Cuts, scratches. No, sir. Mind if I see your hands? Russ held them out, clean, unmarked. Wilford stepped closer to Medina, his voice dropping to a deadly calm that made the principal step back. Here's what's going to happen. Sergeant Strong is going to properly process this scene. He's going to check for fingerprints on that knife. He's going to pull security footage of my son's locker area, and he's going to interview every person who had access to that locker today. Mr. Carpenter, you can't just. And while he does that, you can stand there quietly. Because if you interfere with a police investigation, that's obstruction. And if it turns out you fabricated this incident, that's filing a false report and endangering the welfare of a minor. Medina's face went white. You can't threaten me. Tyrone closed his notebook. That wasn't a threat, Principal Medina. That was a statement of fact. And just so you know, he glanced at Wilford with the slightest hint of a smile. Mr. Carpenter here once saved my career by exposing corruption in my department. He doesn't make accusations lightly. So yeah, I'm going to investigate this properly. Sergeant, I demand you arrest this student. You don't demand anything. Tyrone's voice went hard. I determine if probable cause exists for an arrest. Right now, all I see is a knife that allegedly came from a locker, with no witnesses to the kid actually possessing it, no sheath, no injuries, and a principal who seems awfully eager to see a 14-year-old in handcuffs. He turned to his partner. Rodriguez, secure the locker area as a scene. I want photos of everything. Check security cameras for the last 24 hours, and find out who has master keys to these lockers. Ms. Yates went rigid in the corner. Ma'am, Tyrone said to her, you're a teacher here? Why, yes. Do you have a master key? Her silence was answer enough. We're going to need to talk to you, too. Separately. Wilford watched the color drain from both Medina and Yates. They hadn't expected resistance. They'd expected a scared parent, a compliant police force, and a kid with no advocate. They'd underestimated who they were dealing with. As Rodriguez headed to the locker area, and Tyrone began separating the witnesses, Wilford pulled Russ aside. You okay? Dad, I didn't. I know. I've always known. He put his hand on his son's shoulder. But now we're going to prove it. And we're going to make sure they pay for trying to hurt you to get to me. Russ looked up at his father with a mix of fear and something else, pride. What are you going to do? Wilford's smile was cold. Why do best, son? I'm going to expose them. But first, we need to understand exactly what they're really afraid of. This isn't just about revenge for Lawrence. There's something bigger here. As he watched Medina and Yates exchange panicked glances across the lobby, Wilford Carpenter did what he'd done for 20 years. He started connecting the dots. And this time it was personal. Chapter 4, Unraveling Threads. The security footage told the first part of the story. At 6:47 a.m., before any students arrived, Elnora Yates appeared on camera outside Russ's locker. She glanced around nervously, used her master key, opened the locker, and placed something inside. The angle wasn't perfect, but the bag was visible in her hand. She closed the locker and hurried away. Tyrone Strong played the footage in Medina's office while the principal sat ashen-faced. So, Ms. Yates, want to explain this? He must have dropped something in the hallway yesterday. I was returning it. Her voice shook. You didn't report finding a weapon in the hallway? That's a violation of school safety protocol and possibly criminal negligence. I didn't know it was a weapon. I just saw the bag. Stop. Tyrone held up his hand. You're making this worse. You have the right to remain silent, and I suggest you use it. Wilford stood by the window, arms crossed, watching Medina. The principal hadn't said a word since the video started. His mind was clearly racing, trying to find an exit. My son is free to go. Wilford asked. Yes. No charges. In fact, Ms. Yates is the one who might face charges for evidence tampering and filing a false report. Tyrone stood. Mr. Medina, we'll need your full cooperation with this investigation. After Medina gave a curt nod, Wilford drove Russ home, but his mind was already 3 steps ahead. Back at his house, he sent Russ upstairs and opened his laptop in his office. Irene brought him coffee. They tried to ruin our son, she said quietly. They failed, but this isn't over. Wilford pulled up his encrypted files from 8 years ago, the Lawrence Medina investigation. He scrolled through documents, deposition transcripts, financial records. There had been others involved back then, people who'd escaped scrutiny because Lawrence took the fall. One name jumped out, Willard Shelton, school board member. He'd been a junior administrator during the original scandal, but Wilford hadn't had enough to implicate him directly. Now Shelton sat on the Lincoln Heights Academy Board of Directors. His phone buzzed. Erica Nelson, his colleague from the paper. "I got your background check on Medina," she said. "But there's more." I pulled his financials. Public records show he's living way above his means. Six-figure mortgage, kids in private college, luxury car lease. All on a principal's salary. Where's the money coming from? That's the interesting part. 3 years ago, Lincoln Heights Academy received a major federal grant for school safety improvements and disciplinary reform. Guess who was on the committee that approved the allocation? Willard Shelton. Wilford leaned back in his chair. How much? $3 million over 3 years. But when I looked at the actual improvements made to the school, I'm seeing maybe $500,000 in upgrades. New security cameras, some renovated classrooms. Where'd the rest go? Medina's been skimming. More than skimming. I think he and Shelton have been running a scheme. The grant required the school to maintain a certain disciplinary incident rate to prove the funding was needed. Too few incidents, they lose the money. The pieces clicked into place. So Medina's been fabricating incidents, creating problems to justify the solution they're being paid to provide. Exactly. And if you look at the records, Lincoln Heights has had a spike in weapons violations, drug incidents, and violence reports over the past 3 years. But when you dig deeper, most of these kids were expelled or suspended with minimal evidence. Parents couldn't fight it. They didn't have resources. But I do. Wilford felt the familiar burn of anger that fueled his best work. They targeted Russ because they knew I'd look into it. This was supposed to scare me off, make me back down from whatever they thought I was investigating. Are you investigating them? I wasn't. But I am now. Chapter 5. The Conspiracy Deepens. Wilford spent the weekend building his case. He reached out to parents of students who've been expelled from Lincoln Heights over the past 3 years. One by one, they told similar stories. Evidence appearing out of nowhere, harsh penalties with no appeals, a principal who seemed eager to destroy young lives. Desequiel Benjamin's mother, Rhonda, met him at a coffee shop Monday morning. Her son was Russ's friend, and she was a paralegal who knew something was wrong. Ezekiel saw Ms. Yates at Russ's locker that morning, she said. He's willing to testify if needed. But Mr. Carpenter, you need to know, this goes beyond just your son. I'm listening. She slid a folder across the table. 6 months ago, another parent tried to fight back. Edwin Campos, his daughter Myra, was expelled for allegedly having prescription pills that weren't hers. He's a lawyer, threatened to sue. 2 weeks later, the district attorney's office received an anonymous tip that Edwin was billing clients fraudulently. It went nowhere, but destroyed his reputation. He dropped the case against the school. Wilford's blood ran cold. They're using their connections to retaliate against anyone who challenges them. I think Shelton has reach into the DA's office, maybe even the police department. That's why I'm glad Sergeant Strong is handling Russ's case. He's clean. That afternoon, Wilford met with Tyrone at a diner outside the district. The sergeant looked exhausted. I've been hitting walls, Tyrone admitted. My lieutenant told me to drop the investigation into Yates and Medina. Said it was handled internally by the school board. I pushed back, and now I'm under review for exceeding my authority. Shelton got to your department. Yeah, and I can't prove it. Tyrone stirred his coffee. But I did some digging on my own time. That knife that was planted, I traced the purchase. It was bought from a hunting supply store 3 weeks ago. Cash transaction, but the store has security footage. Want to guess who's on that video? Shelton. No, someone smarter. A guy named Lemuel Lowry. He's Shelton's nephew. Works as Medina's assistant principal. He's the errand boy. The web was expanding. Wilford pulled out his notebook. So we've got Medina as the frontman, Yates as the enforcer, Shelton as the money man with political connections, and Lowry as the fixer. This is organized. There's more. I talked to some other cops off the record. Over the past 3 years, there have been at least a dozen cases where kids from Lincoln Heights were arrested based on evidence that later seemed questionable. But the DA pushed forward anyway, got plea deals, and the cases went away. These kids now have records, ruining their futures, all to maintain the fiction that the school has a serious crime problem. Wilford felt sick. How many lives have they destroyed? At least 30 students. Probably more. Wilford's phone rang. Irene. He answered immediately. What's wrong? Wilford. Someone just pulled up to the house. Two men in a black SUV. They're just sitting there, watching. I'm 10 minutes away. Call 911 if they make a move. I'm also sending you Tyrone's direct number. He was already running to his truck. Tyrone followed. I'll call it in. They raced across town. When they pulled onto Carpenter Street, the black SUV was gone, but Irene stood on the front porch with Russ behind her, both visibly shaken. They never got out, Irene said. But they wanted us to see them. This is intimidation, Wilford. I know. He hugged his wife and son. It means we're getting close. That evening, Erica called with news. You're not going to believe this. I've been tracking the grant money. Shelton didn't just approve the allocation. He's on the board of directors for the Educational Safety Foundation that awarded it. It's a shell organization. The money comes from federal funds, gets filtered through the foundation, and ends up at Lincoln Heights. But I found payments going out from the foundation to several LLCs that don't exist. Shelton's laundering the money. Him and Medina both. They split it. The whole disciplinary crisis is manufactured to keep the funding flowing. Wilford made a decision. We need to go public, but we need ironclad proof. If we publish now, they'll bury us with their connections. What do you need? Recordings. Confessions. We need them to implicate themselves. How are you going to do that? Wilford smiled grimly. By giving them exactly what they want. Chapter 6. The Bait. Tuesday morning, Wilford walked into Principal Medina's office unannounced. The secretary tried to stop him, but he moved past her with the confidence of a man who'd faced down senators and CEOs. Medina looked up from his desk, startled. Mr. Carpenter, you can't just. We need to talk. Wilford closed the door behind him. Alone. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen. Wilford sat down across from him. I know about the grant money. I know about the fabricated disciplinary incidents. I know you and Willard Shelton have been running a scheme for 3 years. Medina's face went pale, but he recovered quickly. That's a serious accusation. I hope you have proof. I do. Financial records, witness statements, security footage. Enough to end your career and put you in prison. Wilford leaned forward. But I'm willing to make a deal. What kind of deal? You leave my son alone. You leave my family alone. And you resign quietly. I won't publish the story. You can slink away with whatever money you've got left, and I won't pursue criminal charges. Medina studied him. Why would you do that? Because I'm tired. Because my son was traumatized, and I just want this over with. Because going through a trial and media circus isn't worth it to me. Every word was a calculated lie, delivered with practiced sincerity. What about Shelton? He's not my problem. You are. He didn't target my kid. Medina relaxed slightly. He was buying it. I need time to arrange things. You have 2 weeks. Announce your resignation for personal reasons. Take your money and disappear. And Medina? Wilford stood. If anything happens to my family, if I even see another black SUV on my street, the deal's off and I burn your entire world down. We clear. Crystal clear. Wilford walked out, and once he was in his truck, he removed the small recording device from his jacket pocket. The whole conversation was captured, but he needed more. That evening, he called Willard Shelton directly. The school board member answered on the 3rd ring. Mr. Carpenter, I've been expecting your call. Have you? Gerald told me about your offer. Quite generous. But I'm curious. Why now? I'm a journalist, Mr. Shelton, not a crusader. I write stories. This one isn't worth the fight. I see. And what guarantee do I have that you'll keep your word? I'm willing to sign an NDA, legally binding. You and Medina resign, and I never publish anything about Lincoln Heights Academy. There was a long pause. Meet me tomorrow. Old Warehouse District, Mason Avenue. There's a closed textile factory. 9 p.m. Come alone, and we'll discuss terms. Agreed. After he hung up, Tyrone Strong emerged from the next room where he'd been listening. That's a trap. They're going to kill you or threaten you. I know. That's why you're going to wire me and have backup ready. They're going to confess, Ty. Men like this can't help but gloat when they think they've won. This is dangerous. Everything worth doing is. Wilford checked his recorder again. Tomorrow night, we end this. Irene stood in the doorway, having heard everything. You're not going alone. Irene, I said you're not going alone. I'm coming too. Absolutely not. Wilford Carpenter, I didn't marry a coward, and I'm not one either. They threatened our son, our family. I'm going to watch these men fall. He looked at his wife, fierce, determined, unshakable, and nodded. Together then, Russ appeared behind his mother. Dad, I want to help. Son, I can't just sit here while you risk everything. Tell me what to do. Wilford looked at his family, then at Tyrone. The sergeant shrugged. The kid's 14, not helpless. Maybe he can be useful. All right, Wilford said. Here's what we're going to do. Chapter 7, Setting the Stage. Wednesday was preparation day. Wilford met with his editor at the paper, secured legal counsel, and coordinated with Tyrone to ensure police backup would be positioned around the warehouse without being detected. Eric and Nelson worked on preparing the exposé that would run the moment they had confirmation. At home, Wilford briefed Russ on his role. You're not going anywhere near that warehouse, but I need you to monitor communications. If something goes wrong, you call 911 and Tyrone immediately. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Russ's voice was steady, more confident than it had been days ago. Good man. That evening, Wilford wore the wire Tyrone provided, a tiny microphone disguised as a shirt button, nearly undetectable. Irene insisted on coming despite his protests, and finally he relented. She'd stay in the truck with a panic button. At 8:45 p.m., they pulled up to the abandoned textile factory. The building was a skeleton of its former self, broken windows like missing teeth, graffiti covering the walls. One light was on inside. Someone was already there. Backups in position. Tyrone's voice came through the earbud. We've got 3 unmarked cars surrounding the building and 2 officers on foot. At the first sign of trouble, we're coming in. Wilford squeezed Irene's hand. Stay in the truck. Anything strange, you drive away immediately. Be careful. He walked toward the entrance. The door hung open, creaking in the wind. Inside, the factory floor was vast and empty, support beams casting long shadows. At the far end, illuminated by a single hanging work light, stood 3 figures: Gerald Medina, Willard Shelton, and Lemuel Lowery. Mr. Carpenter, Shelton called out. Thank you for coming. And alone, I see. Wilford walked forward, stopping about 20 feet away. Let's make this quick. You agree to resign. I don't publish. Everyone moves on. Yes, about that. Shelton's smile was predatory. I'm afraid the terms have changed. How so? You're going to give us every piece of evidence you've collected. Every document. Every recording. Every source. And you're going to publish a retraction claiming your son actually did bring that knife to school. You're insane. Am I? See, we've done our research on you, Mr. Carpenter. Your reputation is built on never backing down, never compromising the truth. If you suddenly admit you were wrong about your own son, it destroys your credibility. Future investigations? Worthless. Who'd trust you? Medina stepped forward. You exposed my brother. Sent him to prison. He died there last year, did you know that? Heart attack. You killed him. Your brother was a criminal. He was family. And you took him from me. From his kids. So I'm going to take your son's future. He'll be expelled, branded a troubled kid. No good college will touch him. And you'll be discredited. That's justice. Wilford kept his expression neutral, but inside he was celebrating. They were confessing everything, and it was all being recorded. And if I refuse? Lowery spoke for the first time, his voice flat. You won't, because we have insurance. A 4th figure emerged from the shadows, a man Wilford didn't recognize, holding a phone. On the screen was a photo of Russ, taken through a window. Today, in his own bedroom. We know where your son is right now, Lowery said. One call, and something unfortunate happens. A gas leak maybe, or a home invasion gone wrong. These things happen in journalism. Enemies making examples. Rage flooded through Wilford, but he forced it down. This was the confession they needed. Conspiracy, extortion, criminal threats. All recorded. You'd hurt a child? Wilford's voice was ice. We'd eliminate a problem, Shelton corrected. Just like we've eliminated others. Edwin Campos thought he could fight back. His reputation is ruined. A parent 2 years ago tried to go to the media. Her business mysteriously lost all its contracts. We have reach, Mr. Carpenter. We have power. And you're going to learn that some people are untouchable. Except you're not. Wilford smiled. Because you just confessed to everything. The three men froze. Wire. Medina breathed. And back up. Sergeant Strong, you get all that. The warehouse doors burst open. Tyrone Strong led a team of officers in, weapons drawn. Police. Hands up. Now. Shelton lunged for the exit, but officers were already there. Lowry reached for something in his jacket, and Tyrone shouted, "Don't even think about it. Hands where I can see them." The man with the phone tried to run, but was tackled by Rodriguez. His phone clattered to the floor. Wilford stomped on it, crushing the screen. "You're all under arrest," Tyrone announced. "Conspiracy, extortion, criminal threats, fraud, evidence tampering. And that's just for starters." Wilford walked up to Medina as officers cuffed him. "You wanted justice for your brother? Here it is. You're going to the same prison he did. Maybe you'll get the same cell." Medina's face contorted with rage. "You set us up." "No. I gave you enough rope to hang yourselves. You did this." As police led them away, Irene ran in from the truck. "Are you all right?" "Better than all right." He held her close. "It's over." Chapter 8, Public Reckoning. The next morning, Wilford's expose hit the front page of the paper and every major news outlet in the state. The recordings were published online, played on television news. By noon, hashtag Lincoln Heights scandal was trending nationally. The public reaction was explosive. Parents of expelled students came forward with their stories. The district attorney's office launched an investigation into all cases originating from Lincoln Heights Academy. The Educational Safety Foundation was raided by federal agents. And Willard Shelton's connections couldn't save him. They scattered like roaches when the light hit. Wilford stood in the newsroom, watching the feeds come in. Erica Nelson approached with fresh coffee. 3 years of lives ruined, she said. And you exposed it in a week. They made it personal. That was their mistake. The school board held an emergency meeting that afternoon, broadcast live. One by one, they condemned Medina, Shelton, and the entire scheme. The board chairman, a woman named Charlotte Barton, who'd been kept in the dark about the fraud, announced a complete review of all disciplinary actions from the past 3 years. Every student expelled or suspended will have their cases reviewed by an independent panel, Barton declared. Those who were wrongly accused will have their records cleared and will be invited to return to Lincoln Heights with full apologies. We failed these children. We failed this community. But we will make this right. Tyrone Strong held a press conference, standing with the DA. This investigation has revealed systemic corruption at multiple levels. We're working with federal prosecutors to ensure everyone involved faces justice. I want to particularly commend Wilford Carpenter, whose journalism exposed crimes that our own system missed. That evening, Wilford received a call from Edwin Campos, the lawyer who'd been targeted before him. "Mr. Carpenter, I can't thank you enough. My daughter's record is being cleared. My reputation, people are reaching out, apologizing. You gave us our lives back. You and dozens of others," Wilford said. "That's what matters." But the best moment came when Russ walked into his father's office, carrying something. He set it on the desk. It was a handwritten apology letter from Principal Medina, written from his jail cell. His lawyer delivered it. Russ explained. Said Medina wanted to apologize before his sentencing. Wilford picked up the letter, read the hollow words of a broken man trying to save himself from additional charges. He crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. "Some apologies don't matter," he told his son. "What matters is that you learn something from this. I learned that truth wins. Eventually, yes. But more importantly, you learn that standing up to bullies, real bullies, the kind with power and resources, requires courage, planning, and unwavering commitment to what's right." He put his hand on Russ's shoulder. "You were brave, son. Through all of this, you never backed down. I had a good teacher." Chapter 9, New Foundations. The trials began 3 months later. Wilford testified in each one, providing documentation and recordings. The evidence was overwhelming. Gerald Medina, found guilty of conspiracy, fraud, evidence tampering, and extortion. sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, 7 more than his brother had served. Willard Shelton, found guilty of racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, and corruption of public office, sentenced to 18 years, his political career incinerated. Lemuel Lowery, found guilty as an accessory to conspiracy and extortion, sentenced to 8 years. Elnora Yates took a plea deal, testified against the others. She received 3 years probation and lost her teaching license permanently. The man with the phone was identified as Ramiro Waters, a private investigator hired by Shelton to surveil and intimidate witnesses. He received 5 years for conspiracy and criminal threats. By the time the last sentence was handed down, Lincoln Heights Academy had been completely restructured. Charlotte Barton was appointed interim principal. Counselors were brought in to help students affected by the scheme, and a memorial fund was established in the name of all the students whose lives had been damaged. Russ returned to school in the fall. At first, there were whispers and stares. He was that kid, the one whose father took down the principal. But gradually, as more truth came out about how many students had been victims, the narrative shifted. He became something else, a survivor, a symbol that fighting back was possible. One afternoon, Russ came home to find his father in the office as always, working on a new investigation. But this time, Wilford closed his laptop when Russ entered. "How was school?" "Good." Mr. Santos asked if you'd come speak to our class about journalism and standing up to corruption. What did you tell him? That I'd ask, but you'd probably say yes. It's what you do. Wilford smiled. You know me well. He stood, stretched. Listen, your mom's making dinner, but I wanted to talk to you first. About what happened. I'm okay, Dad. Really? I know you are. But I'm not talking about just checking in. I wanted to say, I'm proud of you. The way you handled yourself, the courage you showed. A lot of adults would have fallen apart. You stood strong. I had you and Mom. Yes, but you had to find that strength inside yourself first. And you did. Wilford paused. I also want to say I'm sorry. Russ looked surprised. For what? For putting you in that position. My work has enemies. I knew that. I should have been more careful, should have protected you better. Dad, you exposed criminals who were hurting kids. That's not something to apologize for. Maybe, but I'm your father first, journalist second. That's a balance I'll always work on. He pulled Russ into a hug. Just know that you're safe now. They can't hurt you. And anyone who ever tries to hurt you or your mother, they'll face the same fate as Medina and Shelton. I know. At dinner that night, Irene raised a glass of wine. A toast. To Wilford for never backing down. To Russ for his courage. And to family, which is stronger than any conspiracy. They clinked glasses, sparkling cider for Russ. And for the first time in months, the Carpenter house felt peaceful. But peace, Wilford knew, was never permanent. There would always be another corrupt official, another scheme, another powerful person who thought they were untouchable. That's what journalism was, an endless battle against the darkness. But tonight, in this moment with his wife and son safe and smiling, he allowed himself to just be grateful. The doorbell rang. Wilford tensed instinctively, but Russ jumped up. That's Ezekiel. We're working on a history project. As Russ let his friend in, Wilford relaxed. Just a normal evening. Just a family. Ezekiel paused at the office door. Mr. Carpenter? My mom wanted me to thank you again. For everything. Tell Rhonda she's welcome. And Ezekiel? Yes, sir. Thank you for speaking up. For telling the truth about what you saw. That took guts. The boy smiled. Russ is my friend. Friends protect each other. After the boys went upstairs, Irene leaned against Wilford. You did good. We did good. So what's next? Another investigation. Always. He kissed her forehead. But right now I'm exactly where I need to be. The Carpenter family story would become legend in journalism circles. The investigation that started with a planted knife and ended with prison sentences for corrupt officials. Universities would use it as a case study. Young journalists would cite it as inspiration. But for Wilford, the real victory was simpler. His son's laughter echoing from upstairs, his wife's hand in his, and the knowledge that when his family was threatened, he'd done what any father would do. He'd fought back. He'd won. And he'd taught his son that truth, courage, and persistence could defeat even the most entrenched corruption. The sergeant had been right that day in the school lobby. Principal Medina had no idea who he'd messed with. And now, from his federal prison cell, counting the years until freedom, Gerald Medina had all the time in the world to figure it out.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see